السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله بشر وأنذر لا خير إلا دل الأمة عليه ولا شر إلا حذرها منه فصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. نسأل الله جل وعلا أن يبصرنا بالحق وأن يمن علينا بالالتزام به والثبات عليه حتى يتوفانا وهو راض عنا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم آمين. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we worship Him, we seek His assistance, we seek His tawfiq. We pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that which is beneficial to us, and we pray to Him to give us the tawfiq to apply it. فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. اللهم فقهنا في الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Tonight is the night of the 24th of Rabi' al-Thani of the year 1441 since Hijrat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which translates into December the 21st of the Gregorian calendar 2019. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make this night a blessed night, and I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make all the brothers and sisters who are physically with us in this masjid or who might be tuning in live, I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make them mubarakeen, blessed in themselves and in their families. This is the 111th majlis of the commentary on this text of Aqidah called Aqidah At-Tahawiyyah, titled after its author, Imam Al-Allama Abu Ja'far Al-Tahawi Al-Hanafi. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make this majlis a majlis mubarak. This is majlis ilm, which is majlis of dhikr of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. These majalis of dhikr are attended by the angels of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, showered by the mercy of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make our ja'iza when we are done here is that it will be said to us, go for you have been forgiven. And I just wanted to remind myself and yourself of the importance of these majalis al-ilm. I do see that a lot of people are getting a little lazy in attending these majalis al-ilm. Brothers and sisters, we've talked about this a couple of times, or many times actually in the past. And Allah Azza wa Jal has attached to these majalis al-ilm great reward and great ajr from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this is only for those who attend in the masjid. I understand that sometimes things get in the way and you're not able to make it physically to the masjid. Once in a while, I think that's expected. But not to be able to attend on a regular basis is not a good thing. Although we stream live, we try to make it easy, especially for those who are not in the Chicagoland area, so that they can benefit from this ilm, from this knowledge. But that shouldn't be an excuse not to actually come to the masjid when you are within proximity. Watching live or watching from remote is good and you learn, but it's not like coming to the masjid. And this ajr, the great ajr that is attached to attending the circles of knowledge, is only reserved for those who come to the masjid and join in the circle of knowledge in the masjid. So I command you not to miss this great ajr from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Wallahi, this is something that should be prioritized over a lot of things in our lives. It should be prioritized and given the right priority in our ladders of priorities. This is something that should take precedence over other things. It is something that we all need to learn and be sound upon, and to have a good understanding and sound understanding upon. This is al-Aqidah, which is usul al-Deen, which is the basis and the foundation of this deen. If you have the foundation sound, then the building will be sound. And if the foundation is not sound, then how can you have a building that is sound, right? It's like building a building and not have the right foundation in it. It's going to collapse. And we mentioned it multiple times in the past that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam compared this deen, which is deen al-Islam, he compared it to a building. He said, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. Islam was built upon 5. Built upon 5, it gives you the impression that it is like a building, right? And the foundation of this building is usul al-din, or ilm al-tawheed and ilm al-aqidah, which is the foundation of this building. If you have the foundation correct, if it is a sound foundation, then the building will be sound and will be secure and safe. But if the foundation is not, then the status or the state of the building will be in jeopardy and will be not safe and secure. So this is why these majalis al-ilm are so important, especially when they have to do with al-aqidah and ilm al-tawheed and things like that. So again, I hope that we will all give priority, the right priority, and give precedence in preference of this majalis al-ilm over other things that are of lesser priority or should be of lesser priority. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding of this deen. Allahumma ameen. But still, if you're not able to make it, then by all means do attend or do tune in live. And if you have questions also, inshallah, you're able to actually communicate those to us over the internet. With that said, where we left off last Saturday, we're going to pick up from where we left off. قال المصنف الإمام أبو جعفر الطحاوي الحنفي رحمه الله تعالى, in the statement number 203, he said, وعلماء السلف من السابقين ومن بعدهم من التابعين أهل الخير والأثر وأهل الفقه والنظر لا يذكرون إلا بالجميل ومن ذكرهم بسوء فهو على غير السبيل. And the early scholars from the Salaf, the early predecessors, and the Tabi'een, the successors who came after them, the people upon good and the narrations, and the people of fiqh and discernment are not to be mentioned except with fine words, and whoever speaks ill of them, then he is not upon the correct path. We already started commentary on this statement, and we did talk about the fact that Imam Abu Ja'far, after talking about the rights of the Sahaba, and after talking about the rights of Ahl al-Bayt, which is the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and what they deserve from the Ummah, then he transitioned into the group of people who come next in virtue. And we said these are the scholars, for the scholars are the heirs of the prophets and the messengers alayhimus salatu wassalam, and they are the ones who inherited the great inheritance from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is the knowledge, which is al-ilm. And we said these, as Imam Abu Ja'far pointed out, these are of two types. These are, in particular, there's Ahl al-Athar. The first group of scholars are Ahl al-Athar, or the people of narration, Ahl al-Hadith, which are the scholars of narration of Hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, also referred to as Ulama al-Riwayah, yani the scholars of narration. And there's another one, the other group is Ahlul Fiqh wal Nadar. These are al-Fuqaha, who look into the text to understand, to try to derive the rulings of the Sharia from the text. And these are also called Ulama al-Diraya, yani the people or the scholar of understanding. Diraya, yani they understand, they derive the meanings and the rulings from the text. We said, like for example, Imam Abu Hanifa. The Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, rahimahullah ta'ala, he's an example of the scholars of al-fiqh, al-fuqaha, right? And these are from ulama al-diraya. And we said it is possible that one scholar or more could be actually from the two groups. So they may have the two types of knowledge. Ilm al-riwayah, so they are from the narrators as well as from al-fuqaha. And we call them fuqaha al-muhaddithin. So they are from ulama al-hadith as well as from al-fuqaha. So they gather both parts of the knowledge. And we gave the example of Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, Imam Malik, right? Imam al-Bukhari, etc., etc. And we said these have great virtue in the ummah. And this is why Imam Abu Ja'far is mentioning them. And we brought forward and we narrated several of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that shows to us the great virtue and the great status, manzila, al-azima, the great status of those scholars in the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We also said that the scholars, why are they virtuous? Where did this fadl comes from, right? He's saying that they are not to be mentioned except with good because of their virtue. This fadl that is attached to them comes from the fact that these are select group of people from the ummah. They are a group of select people from the ummah who stood up and they carried out what Allah Azza wa Jal mandated upon them from protecting the Sharia, from protecting the deen, from protecting the Aqidah of the deen, and from clarifying the rulings of the Sharia to people, and telling them about what is halal and what is haram, what Allah Azza wa Jal made halal and what Allah Azza wa Jal made haram. And so they clarified to the ummah the meanings of the ayat and the meanings of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that we can benefit from them. This is their task, and this is what they did, and it is a great task, and it's so beneficial to the ummah. We also did mention or talked about, speaking of al-fiqh, we said ahlul fiqh, and we talked about al-fuqaha. Al-fiqh, a lot of people misunderstand al-fiqh only and restricted to the matters, or what we call them al-masail al-amaliyya, the practical matters, like al-tahara, like siyam, salah, etc., etc. That's not the case. Al-fiqh is of two types. There is al-fiqh al-akbar, the greater fiqh, because of its importance. Why is it greater? Because it's due to its importance. And this is ilm al-aqidah, and ilm al-tawheed, and ilm al-iman. And they refer to it as al-masail al-ilmiyya, yani the matters of al-ilm, right? These are the matters of al-tawheed and the matters of al-aqidah. And also the other type is al-fiqh al-asghar, the smaller, or the al-fiqh of the matters of al-amal, that has to do with al-amal, which is al-furu', and these are the matters of, for example, al-tahara, salah, the contracts, relationships, etc., etc., which is also very important. But ilm al-aqidah is obviously, no question about it, is more important, and because, like we said, this is the foundation. This is the foundation of this deen. And Rasulullah ﷺ praised the scholars in many hadith that we brought forward, like I said. So this statement tells us about how Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah deal respectfully, and they dignify, and they respect, and they honor their scholars. They look up to them, and they don't talk about them except with ways of good. Like we mentioned about the Sahaba. Talking only in ways of good, only mentioning them in ways of good, mentioning the scholars is like from the same type of mentioning the Sahaba to Rasulullah ﷺ and Ahlul Bayt only with ways of good. Because they continue transmitting this Sharia. They continue transmitting the Sharia, and they guard the Sharia against changes and manipulation, etc., etc. They clarify to the people what Allah Azza wa Jal wants from us and the ahkam of the Sharia, and that is why they are carrying out a very important task, and this is why they ought to be respected, and they ought to be dignified, rahimahumullah ta'ala. And they are from the ones also who protected al-aqidah, like Imam Abu Ja'far rahimahullah ta'ala. This is one of the deeds, one of the actions of them, which is writing the books to document the correct aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah against the changes and against the innovations and the fabrications that certain deviant groups have come up with. So this is, like I said, this is an important topic that we need to respect and only talk about them. And then he said, whoever mentioned them in other than that, in other than good, وَمَنْ ذَكَرَهُمْ بِسُوءٍ, and whoever mentioned them or speak of them ill, then he is not upon the path. He is not upon the correct path. فَهُوَ عَلَى غَيْرِ السَّبِيلِ. He is not upon the correct path of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And we said that we respect them, we respect the scholars, even if they may have committed a mistake. Meaning, they did not reach in a specific matter of the deen or in certain matters of the deen. Even if they did not reach the correct conclusion or the correct hukum, we still respect them. We do not criticize them based on that. We do not discredit them because of that, because we know that they did not intend to be wrong. They did not intend to be wrong, but rather they made their ijtihad. They tried their best to seek al-haq and to find it, but they're bashar, they're not ma'sumin, like I said, and they may have been wrong in certain cases or in certain matters, so they still get the ajr from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, but we do not discredit them, nor do we criticize them because of that, but we do not at the same time follow them in their errors. Yani, not criticizing them and respecting them doesn't mean that you continue following them in the errors that they may have made. We don't follow them in that, right? We respect them and not following them in the mistakes or errors that they may have made. This is not disrespectful of them, but rather we should always follow Rasulullah ﷺ and follow the text, be it from the Quran or from the Sunnah. And both groups of scholars, whether they are from the people of al-athar and narration, or whether they are from Ahl al-Fiqh wal-Nadar, or from the people of Diraya, the scholars of Diraya, both of them, they actually benefited the Ummah, and we have a need for both of them. And each one of them, they actually filled a specific need for the Ummah. So we should mention them only in ways of good. لا يذكرون إلا بالجميل. We should only mention them in ways of good, and never do we mention them in ways of evil or speak ill of them. We did also mention that the first matter related to the statement is the fact that we respect them and we have the highest regard for them based on two reasons, or because of two reasons. The first one is that Allah Azza wa Jal told us that all the believers are awliya of one another. Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minatu ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. This walaya from the believers toward their fellow believers applies to all of them. And this walaya is even greater. Yani the walaya is not one level. In al-walaya, like we said before, we mentioned it multiple times. What does al-walaya means? We say wali. What does al-walaya means? Al-walaya means al-mahabba, loving, and al-nusra, to support and back up, right? So this is the meaning of al-walaya. And this walaya, the more the person is a believer, the higher and the greater iman that the person carry or have, then the greater the walaya for them is. And no question, after the messengers and the prophets and the Sahaba, next come the scholars. So they absolutely deserve the greatest walaya, or one of the greatest walaya from us. And the person, the greater the mu'min he or she is, then obviously the more walaya they deserve, right? So it is relative to how much of al-iman they have, and how much of the taqwa, and how much of the description of al-iman apply to them. So obviously they deserve a lot of respect, and we should only mention them in ways of good, like we talked before. We do not discredit them because of a mistake or some mistakes that they may have done. We said also another reason why we respect them, because criticizing the scholars in reality, and we didn't talk about that, in reality is actually discrediting or criticizing the Sharia itself. Because who are the ones who clarify the Sharia for us? The scholars. The common Muslim, they do not have the tools to be able to tell what the Sharia or what the ahkam, what the rulings of the Sharia on their own. They need somebody who has the tools, who has the knowledge, who has spent years and years in learning to be able to tell them the rulings of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So if the people start to criticize the scholars, then the respect of the scholars in their heart will diminish. And as a result, the respect of the Sharia will diminish. So this is why we say they should only be mentioned in ways of good. And then if the Sharia, the respect of the Sharia and the respect of the scholars diminish or is weakened in the hearts of the Muslim, then everybody will take matters in their own hand, and everybody will start being mufti for himself or herself, and it becomes chaotic. And this is not how it is supposed to be. So this is why we say that mentioning or speaking ill of the scholars is a grave matter and is a very serious matter. And it is from the same type of speaking ill of the Sahaba. Because who continues the same task of the Sahaba of transmitting the Sharia and conveying the Sharia? It is the scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala. And this is why they ought to be respected. And this is from al-nasiha to that Rasulullah ﷺ told us about al-nasiha li-ulad li-a'immat al-muslimin. Remember, قال Rasulullah ﷺ, ad-din al-nasiha. The deen is al-nasiha. they said, Liman ya Rasulullah, to whom? They said, Lillahi. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Lillahi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wa li'a'immatil muslimina wa 'ammatihim. And to the leaders of the Muslim. And we said the leaders of the Muslim are of two types. The leaders in dunya, which are the, like the Khalifa or the president or the leader. And then also the leaders in the Sharia, which are the scholars. So a nasiha to the scholars is to actually respect them and to respect the knowledge that they carry and the job and the task, the great job and the great task that they are doing of spreading the deen and reminding people of the rulings of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We also said that this praise of the scholars or respecting them, right, is not on the condition. There's no such a condition that this is only when the scholars never make mistake. Nobody says that. There is no such a condition that they should not make mistake, because they're not ma'sumin. They're human beings like me and you. But they did their best, right? They did their ijtihad to reach that which is haqq. So whether we're talking about the scholars of al-athar, Ahl al-athar wal-hadith, or whether Ahl al-fiqh wal-nazar, both of them, they're not ma'sumin, like I said. And, they may actually make mistake once in a while, or, a few mistakes here and there. That's absolutely possible. And we said there is actually a great benefit from that, as we mentioned last time, that some of the scholars, they said this is so that they do not resemble the prophets and the messengers, right? If the scholars, imagine for a second that the scholars never make mistake. They're always upon haqq, never make mistake. Then people will mix them with the prophets and the messengers. Then what's the difference, right? If they are always upon haqq and they never, and we know that the messengers and the prophets alayhi salatu wassalam are the only ones who do not speak from desire. لا ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. So only the messengers and the prophets, and this is a characteristic that is only to the anbiya and to the rusul, to the prophets and the messengers, that they do not speak from hawa. They only speak based on haqq, because Allah Azza wa Jal asamahum. He made them ma'sumin. They do not make mistake in the sharia, in the deen, but rather everything that they say is correct and is haqq, and this is why they ought to be followed absolutely. The prophets and the messengers are to be followed absolutely. That doesn't apply to the scholars. Now obviously the scholars, being those scholars, true scholars we're talking about, that have, spent years and years in acquiring the knowledge sincerely to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And as such, a scholar obviously is somebody who is, for the most part of it, most of the time, he is upon haqq, right? They may make mistake here and there, but that is not to say that they make a lot of mistake. This is not an alim to begin with. This is not a scholar to begin with. So the scholars, the true scholars, al-ulama al-rabbaniyin that we're talking about, are the ones who are, for the most part of it, upon the correct path and upon the sharia, but they may make mistake here and there based on their ijtihad. But they did their ijtihad, and that is why they are rewarded by Allah Azza wa Jal for their ijtihad. But if they make mistake, we don't follow them in that mistake, but otherwise they'll be like the prophets and the messengers, right? They'll be like the prophets and the messengers, who are the only ones to be followed absolutely in all the matters of the deen. We also say that, sometimes, the difference, sometimes, this is one of the common discussions or the common arguments that happen, right? Why do the scholars differ in their opinions with respect to certain matters? Why are there differences of opinion among the scholars? We say there are multiple reasons for this difference of opinions. And this is something that the scholars have talked about a lot. But enough to say that, those who reach this level of knowledge, and the ummah, the whole ummah, affirms the righteousness and the piety, and that these are from the scholars of the ummah, accepted them as true scholars of the ummah. Like all the ummah accepts the Imam Abu Hanifa, accepts the Imam Malik, accepts the Imam Al-Shafi'i, accepts the Imam Ahmad, accepts the Imam Al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, and the rest of the A'immah, right? Many, many others. These are the most famous, but they're by no means that we're saying that these are the only ones. There are so many A'immah of ulama Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who the Ummah have accepted them and agreed upon their leadership in the deen, right? We actually take all of them, but they, like I said, they may have some differences, and sometimes, one alim may have an opinion that is stronger based on the evidence, and some of them, they have a weaker opinion based on the evidences that appear to him, right? But the true scholar, and this is what I should say, a true scholar is not the one who follows one of these ai absolutely from A to Z. And this is, by the way, one of the common questions that always gets asked. A lot of people, for example, and it happened to me a lot of times, and this is what a lot of people from those who follow a specific madhab, they always ask, right? Am I not supposed to follow a specific madhab? Right? This is one of the common questions. We say, we're talking about the scholars in here. A true scholar is not somebody who follows a particular imam from A to Z. Doesn't deviate from the madhab at all. This is not a scholar. This is not what the scholar is. The scholar is the one who does not make a blind taqleed. He does not make a blind taqleed to a particular person, but rather follows the dalil. He looks in the dalil and he uses the tools of an ijtihad that he learned to actually come up with the stronger opinion, with a strong opinion, or with the haqq that appears to him based on the text from the Quran or from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And obviously, the scholars, the ai*imma, in particular, the four ai*imma in particular, they are bashar, like I said. So it is conceivable and it should be even expected that they may have disagreement. One alim looks at the evidence in a way, and the other alim looks at the evidence in another way. So there will be some disagreement among them, right? A true scholar, like I said, is the one who follows the stronger opinion based on the evidences. By the way, I get asked this a lot, and I even was challenged several times with respect to this particular matter, right? They say we should follow a specific madhab because, and if I mention, for example, that, such and such, imam from, in general, he follows a specific madhab, but sometimes they differ with the imam of the madhab in certain matters. So what is the answer typically is, but he's a alim. And I always say, but I thought this is what you claim to yourself. You're calling yourself a mufti. You're calling yourself a alim. You're calling yourself a maulana. So this title means, to me, it means that you've learned enough to actually be able to derive and make ijtihad in the deen, that you should actually try to derive and use all the evidences and come up with the correct understanding, even if it differs from the madhab that you follow. You said there were alim. So, for example, we mentioned at the very, very beginning of this series, I don't know if you remember, I know it's been a long time ago, but just to refresh your memory, Imam Abu Ja'far once, and this is from his biography, if you go back to the biography of Imam Abu Ja'far, he once was reviewing a number of the masail, of the matters in the Sharia, in the fiqh, with another scholar, another judge, who is also a scholar at the same time. So he was quizzing him. What is the hukum of this? What is the ruling of this? What is the ruling of this? He asked him a long list of matters, and he was quizzing him. So at the end, he said to Imam Abu Ja'far At-Tahawiyyah, although he is Hanafi, he said, but you've actually, in several matters, you answered in a way that differs from Imam Abu Hanifa. He said, yeah, but I do not do taqleed a'ma. I do not follow blindly Imam Abu Hanifa. And yet, at the same time, he is what called? He's called what? He's an Imam Abu Ja'far, Imam Abu Ja'far At-Tahawi al-Hanafi. So although he disagrees with certain matters from Imam Abu Hanifa, he is still called from the scholars of Imam Madhab al-Hanafi. That does not contradict. The fact that you disagree with an Imam of the Madhab does not contradict that you in general follow that Madhab. That's perfectly fine. Because for them, what it means to be, for example, from this Madhab or from that Madhab, what it meant for them is that they actually agree with the Imam on usul al-din, on the comprehensive rules that they came up with to be able to derive the rulings of the Sharia. Each of those madhahib, the famous madhahib,
they set certain rules. They are called as usul al-fiqh. So the Imam Abu Hanifa has usul, and the Imam Malik has his own usul of the madhab. And the Imam Ahmad and the Imam Shafi'i, they have their own usul of their madhab. Which is, like I said, these are the general rules. Usul al-fiqh. It is not a specific ruling, but rather the rules that they derived by looking at the text, the Quran and the Sunnah. They were able to come up with comprehensive rules that help them to decide, is this for wajib, is this mustahab, is this halal, is this haram, is this makruh, is this haram, etc., etc. You know what I'm talking about? So, some scholars may say, well, I tend to agree with usul al-fiqh al-Hanafi more than any other madhab. That's fine. But then at the same time, they do not necessarily follow Imam Abu Hanifa in every matter. You see what I'm saying? Are you following? This is a very important matter. So like I said, what really shocks me sometimes and what stuns me even at times is they say, well, they may have disagreed with the Imam because they're scholars. But I say, but this is what you're claiming to yourself. This is what you're saying to people. I am a mufti. What does it mean mufti? You're alim. You're saying, you're claiming to people that I am a alim. If you truly are, then why do you follow Imam Abu Hanifa in every matter? This is not what the alim is supposed to do. This is not what the alim is supposed to do. Yes, the common Muslim, they're supposed not to actually derive the rulings or follow, just start to jump from one madhab to another based on their own desires and based on their own inclination. Because otherwise, if you do that, what's going to happen? People will start shopping around, as I call it. They'll take a lot of people, or most people, what they'll end up doing, taking the easiest of the four madhab. They look at the four, oh, this is easier, I'll take from here. Now, in this other matter, oh, this is easier, this looks more, nicer to me, right? So they'll start chopping around and taking from every madhab the easiest of which. And they'll end up with another religion other than the religion of Islam. This is wrong. You shouldn't follow that. But you should, and again, this is a lecture of its own, inshallah. But very quickly, the duty of the one who does not know, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You should actually consult with the scholars that is witnessed, or the people attest that they are pious, and they have piety, and they have ilm and knowledge, and the tools that allows them to derive or give fatwa or to derive the rulings. But the scholars themselves, those who say that I am upon knowledge, I call myself a mufti, I call myself a maulana, I call myself a alim. If you truly are, then you shouldn't follow a particular madhab from A to Z. That's not what the alim should do. So the point is, what I'm trying to say is that none of those a'imma, المشهود لهم بالتقوى والورع, that the whole ummah witness or bear testimony that they are pious and they are upon haqq, none of them intended, even in those matters where he may have been wrong, or this is more on the weaker opinion, not the stronger opinion, right? Ra'i al-marjuh, not the Ra'i al-rajih, as they call it in the Arabic language. They did not intend it that way. They tried their best, but they may have ended up with the weaker opinion, right? Not the strong, or even a wrong opinion altogether, right? But they did not intend to do that. It wasn't their intention. They didn't do this on purpose, but rather this is based on their ijtihad, and they tried their best to reach that which is haqq. But like I said, there is no isma to any person except the messenger and the prophets. And this is what makes us regular people. This is what makes us bashar. Sometimes we may be upon haqq, sometimes we may make mistake or may err, and the scholars are no different. They're no different. They're obviously upon knowledge, but they're still bashar. They're still bashar, not ma'sumin, not infallible. طيب. Moving forward with that, he said, Imam Abu Ja'far, he said, وَعُلَمَاءُ السَّلَفِ. What is the meaning of a salaf? Salaf are the predecessors, yani those who came before us. Yani Imam Abu Ja'far, if you remember, we said from his biography, he lived for the most part of it, he lived in the 4th century. In the 3rd century. 3rd Hijri century. He lived in the 3rd Hijri century. So what he's referring to, ulama as-salaf, are those who came before him. Those who came before him, rahimahullah ta'ala. Yani that preceded the Imam Abu Ja'far. He's saying, in ulama as-salaf, from the sabiqin, from the early ones, yani these are the ulama of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and Tabi' al-Tabi'een. Those who preceded him rahimahullah ta'ala. And then he said, and those وَمَنْ بَعْدَهُمْ, and those who came afterward, yani those who followed them, right? From tabi'in and tabi'in, etc. These are from the generations that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has praised as the best of the generations, right? These are the best of the generations, and they've been upon haqq, or upon more haqq than the later generations. Because in the later generations, unfortunately, this is when the deviations and deviant methodologies and an ibtida' and the innovation in the deen and changes started to come into them, and actually being upon other than or what violate the khilaf al-sunnah, being violating of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, started to appear. But in the early generations, this is when they were more closer to the sunnah and more closer to and stay away from al-bid'ah, from the innovations, and be more upon the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Very quickly, with respect to talking about the two groups of the scholars, Ahl al-Athar and Ahl al-Fiqh wal-Nazar. Speaking of those two, like I said, there are those who were more, they took utmost care. There's the first group of Ahl al-Riwayah and Ahl al-Athar. These who were more upon studying the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the narration, studying the chain of narrations, protecting it from fabrications, etc., etc. These are called the people of the narration and the people of al-athar of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other group, like we said, Ahl al-Fiqh wal-Nazar. These are the fuqaha and those who were more studying the understanding of these texts, to try to derive the rules and to derive the meanings from those texts and the ahkam and the rulings that can be derived from these texts. This ashab al-fiqh wal-nazar actually started early on, and it is there were two schools who started those schools, if you wish. It actually is or can be traced back. This group of scholars, or this way of methodology, can be traced back all the way to two schools. The first one, which can be traced to a scholar called Al-Imam Rabi'ah. The Imam Rabi'ah, who was in Medina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It was headed by Imam Rabi'ah, who is famously known as Rabi'at al-Ra'i, from opinion. Rabi'at al-Ra'i. This is Imam Rabi'ah ibn Abi Abd al-Rahman Farrukh. He is the one who started to come up with these rules, comprehensive rules, and started to actually make analogy, to draw analogy based on these rules, or using these rules to come up with the rulings of the Sharia. There was another school in Kufa, in Iraq, which was headed by Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man ibn Thabit, rahimahullah ta'ala, there was some differences compared to Imam Abu Rabi'at al-Ra'i. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time upon that. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of where this traces back to, where it started, right? Like I said, so there were two schools. The school of Imam Rabi'ah, known as Rabi'at al-Ra'i in Medina, and the school of Imam Abu Hanifa. And this is why they used to call them, oftentimes they're referred to as Ashab al-Ra'i, the people of al-Ra'i, of the opinion. Meaning that they busied themselves and they took utmost care of deriving rules from the text that they would rely upon to derive the rulings from the text of the Sharia. So this is, I didn't want to spend too much time on this. The last thing that I want to hint at very quickly, inshallah, is a lot of people sometimes they get confused. Why are there differences between the scholars? Why, for example, this imam thinks that, for example, this is wajib. Another imam thinks, with respect to the absolutely same matter, they say, for example, this is, mustahab, only mustahab, or somebody say, or one of them says this is halal, and the other one says haram. This difference is in the opinion. Where does it come from? The scholars have studied that, and very quickly, for example, an imam, or Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he actually attributed those differences in the opinion, or in the rulings, to several reasons. He said the first one is that there is, for example, the dalil or the evidence that one scholar used as an evidence to his opinion. For another scholar, this is not a true or this is not a sahih evidence. Yani it hasn't been proved authentically to him. So for some scholar, he may think that this is a dalil sahih. For another scholar, it may not be a sahih dalil for them in their understanding. So this is actually one of the reasons of differences. The other one is that for them, the dalil may be something that has been abrogated by another dalil. So one dalil is actually abrogates a previous dalil. That, this was early on, but then later on the hukm changed. And to another scholar, it may not be the case. So this is one of the reasons also that there may be differences of opinion among the scholars. Another one is that there could be, for example, two evidences in front of the imam, right? For one of them, this dalil is stronger. The other one, for another scholar or another imam, the other dalil is stronger than the first one. So this is what may lead to differences of opinion, right? Because they're going to obviously build or base their ruling based on the stronger opinion. So this is also one of the matters that may lead to a difference of opinion. The last one is obviously, for example, a hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Each hadith has a chain of narrators or transmitters, right? These are the people of sanad. So for some scholars, this man in the chain may be trustworthy. Or one of them may be trustworthy. For another imam, that person may not be trustworthy and they may not necessarily take from them. So obviously the one who trusts those men or in the chain, they will take this as an evidence, as a proof, as a correct proof. For others, it may not be taken, and etc., etc. So this is one of the, or some of the ways, or some of the reasons why the scholars may end up with different opinions, even in the same matter of the Sharia. But what matters for us is to say or to understand that this difference of opinion does not go back to desires. We don't think, this is what's important, we don't think that they ended up with a difference of opinion because each one of them is following their own desires. That's not the case, right? That's not the case. Each one of them, they follow specific rules and specific way of, deriving the ruling, and this is why they may end up with difference of opinion. But there's no such a thing. The four of them, and even the rest of the scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, we don't believe in any one of them. There is no such a thing that a scholar came up with a ruling, but they have no evidence to it. You know what I'm saying? There's no such a thing that they came up just out of their thin air, right? They just came up because this is what they like, or based out of nothing, right? Based on nothing, that they came up with this ruling. There is no such a thing. Each one of them, they came up with the ruling and the opinion that they came up with based on the evidence that they saw as the stronger opinion. But still, they may still be wrong. You know what I'm saying? So this is just to quickly go over this, what I think is an important matter with respect to this. So I want to finish this, the commentary on this statement by saying that the duty of all Muslims, and it is wrong to see sometimes that people criticize the scholars or may attribute to them or attack them with all different ways that undermine the scholars. That, these muftis, for example, they just give fatwa based on their desires or what they like or based on their benefit, etc., etc. That's not the case. Obviously, we're talking about, again, and I want to double underline and make sure that we're talking about the true scholars. This does not apply to scholars that they are actually upon deviancy or upon misguidance. We're talking about al-ulama al-rabbaniyin. Deviant scholars are not actually part of the statement. This statement does not apply to them. We're talking about the scholars of Ahl al-Ilm and Ahl al-Taqwa to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. These are the ones that we are talking about, and this is what the Imam Abu Ja'far is referring to. And obviously this includes, first and foremost, the four famous Imam, or A'imma, the four famous A'imma meaning the Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, the Imam Malik, the Imam al-Shafi'i, the Imam Ahmad, and the rest of A'immat Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, al-mashhood lahum bil-taqwa. These obviously are the ones who are meant by this statement by the Imam Abu Ja'far. We should only mention them in ways of good and not speak ill of them, and whoever speaks ill of them is not upon the correct path. Now, like I said, this does not include those scholars who are upon deviancy and misguidance. Those who, for example, present themselves as scholars and they, make it look like that they are scholars, but they spread shirk and they spread shirkiyat and they spread innovations in the deen and fabrications and even crazy stuff, as we're going to see a little later. Actually, these who are not upon knowledge, as a matter of fact, they are upon ignorance, and they are upon deviation and upon misguidance. They have nothing from the knowledge of Hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or from the fiqh in the deen, which is the understanding in the deen, but rather they actually attracted people by attaching them to the innovations and to the by decorating the innovation, decorating shirk in their eyes and attaching them to the deceased people and to the residents of the graves, and they attached them to the innovation and decorated this in their eyes. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? Why should we not do that? And they attach the people to the these different celebrations that are not legislated in the deen of Islam. This is what we're talking about. These actually should not. As a matter of fact, these groups of so-called scholars, they're not true scholars, but they call themselves, they claim to be scholars. These actually should be refuted, and people should be actually warned against them. This is from a nasiha fi din. This is in reality the actual nasiha that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised the ummah and took it upon the ummah that we should give a nasiha. And this is why, by the way, we say that a lot of A'immat Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they wrote books to actually warn against these deviant groups. And, even the A'immat themselves, they wrote books and they warned the Muslim against the deviant ideologies. And as a matter of fact, this text of Aqidah itself, how many times throughout this text and throughout these statements did Imam Abu Ja'far mention something because he is showing that this is different than what these deviant groups? How many times did we mention that, right? How many times did we say the reason Imam Abu Ja'far is mentioning this particular statement is because Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah believe in such a thing, in certain things, and there were groups, deviant groups, who went misguided or went astray with respect to the matters of al-qadar, for example, or with respect to the matter of the al-iman, or the matters of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, etc., etc. We did mention this a lot. Why? Because they warn against them. And this is the duty of every Muslim, especially the scholars, to actually warn against those so-called scholars. They're not in reality scholars, but they are upon wal-iyadu billah misguidance and they are astray. So these do not actually deserve this fadl and this right to only talk about them in ways of good and not to mention or not to speak ill about them. They ought to be actually exposed. They ought to be shown how wrong they are and how deviant they are. This is actually from al-nasiha lillah and al-nasiha li Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are deviant people, and they ought to be called out as such. They ought to be called out as deviant groups. They are not, or deviant people, they are not upon the correct path. They are not upon the path or the correct path. This concludes the commentary of this statement 203. Any questions quickly, inshallah? Can I have a cup of water? No. Any questions? Tafadhal. Can we use the microphone? Salam. No tough questions, please. No, just kidding. So this is actually a quick question, and the answer to that is a lecture on its own. But in a nutshell, just very quickly, obviously, it's a good question. How do we know the true alim from not untrue alim, if you wish? Who is the true alim and who's not, right? How, as a common Muslim, right, I'm supposed to ask the scholars, how do I identify them? How do I know them? Well, obviously, for one, if you see that they actually give you the proof, the evidence, when they give you the rulings, if you come and ask them, and if they give you the ruling, they actually mention the dalil, the proof from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal or from the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And even when they give you the hadith as a proof, they give you the grade of that hadith. This is some of the signs of a true scholar. A lot of people, by the way, like I said, and I sadly say that. I don't, it's not something that I take lightly. But some people who present themselves as scholars, you go to them and you ask them, and they'll just give you the rulings. Like, where did you get this ruling from? What is the basis of this ruling? There's no answer. They don't even know what the answer is. Because they just memorized from a certain book that this is the ruling. How was that ruling derived? They have no idea. They don't even necessarily know the language, let alone how it was derived. You're not a scholar then. They give you a hadith, and then you find out that it is a fabricated hadith or a very weak hadith. It doesn't work as a proof. It's not enough as a proof. How can I worship Allah Azza wa Jal based on something that is not authentic? For example. So bottom line, some of the characteristics or qualifications, if you wish, of a true scholar is that they actually have a sound knowledge of the Quran, of the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They know from the hadith what is nasikh and what is al-mansukh, for example. What hadith came later on and may have abrogated a previous hadith. So they know when did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the timing of when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said the different ahadith. They have a knowledge of all the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that apply to this particular matter. And some people, they present themselves as a scholar, but they only know one hadith that apply to this matter. But there are other hadith that also talk about the same matter. And had you known about them, then the rulings would have changed. You don't take one hadith based on your own desires or one ayah or based on your own desire, and then you say this is the hukm of Allah Azza wa Jal. There are also these other hadith in the books of Sunnah. What do we do with them? Do we just neglect them? Throw them behind our back? Can't do that. This is all haqq, and this is all from al-wahy. So the alim, the true alim, is the one who really has a comprehensive knowledge of all the evidences, either from the Quran or all the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that apply to this particular matter. They have a good knowledge, sound knowledge of all of that. They should also have a knowledge of usul al-din, which is the way, the rules by which they derive the hukm. Also, they should and must have a knowledge of the Arabic language. If they do not, then sorry, with all due respect, they're not scholars. They cannot be scholars, nor muftis, nor maulana, or all of these things. They just don't qualify as such if they do not speak soundly the Arabic language or understand the Arabic language. Not only that, they must also understand the ways that the Arabs used to speak. Because there are not only the Arabic language, knowledge of the Arabic language alone is not enough, because the Arabs, like every other people, they're like every other group of people, or what they call group of people, let's put it this way. I'm sorry? Race, exactly. Like every race, like every language, right? The people of that language, they have certain ways of expression. They express things in a certain way. You have to understand that, because the Quran was revealed in بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. This is how it was revealed. And Rasulullah ﷺ was an Arabi. He was an Arab from Quraysh. And Quraysh used to speak the Arabic language in a certain way, so you have to understand how they used to express. Because sometimes they would express, even if you know the language, but if you don't know how they expressed it, you may actually misunderstand what the meaning of the statement is. And Rasulullah ﷺ was an Arab. So all of this, again, like I said, I don't want to take too much time, but all of this is from the qualifications of a true scholar. And like I said, the only scholar who should be asked or qualified to give fatwa or should be asked, Ahl al-Dhikr, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ, ask the Ahl al-Dhikr, they are the ones who is al-faqih al-mujtahid. This is the one who can give fatwa. Al-faqih al-mujtahid. Al-faqih is the one who understands. Al-mujtahid, يعني who can actually do ijtihad, meaning who can actually understand the evidences, the proofs that underlie that ruling. Yani he will tell you, this is how we derive the ruling. It is your right to know that. This is deen. It's not a matter of disrespect. I don't mean disrespect to the person, but I, as a Muslim, as a servant of Allah Azza wa Jal, if I am to go to ask for the ruling in a particular matter, I want to have tranquility in the heart that this is the haqq. Because this is a practice, that something that I'm going to put into practice for a long time, or potentially for the rest of my life to put it into practice. So this is deen. I have the right to know, to have tranquility in the heart that this is the haqq that Allah Azza wa Jal wants. Hopefully that answers your question in this quick answer, inshallah. Like, any other questions? Where? Oh, yeah. Any other question? Take it easy on me though, right?
There are some people who state that we don't have to refer back to the scholars because they don't know our situation, and these people who say this are from academia, and they receive PhDs, and they have many videos, thousands of videos. So
how should you address that? So this is a very good question. The brother is asking about those who call themselves scholars in the West, right? In the West. And what they advise people, or they make them shy away from referring to the scholars of the East per se, right? Of the true scholars, mashallah, ulama, the big ulama, right? Kibar ahl al-ilm, who are back home, right? And they say that the reasoning is that they don't know our situation, right? So we shouldn't refer to them. And even this is from the irony. I mean, this is from the most shocking things that I've heard. They even say that there's a fiqh that applies to the East, and there's another fiqh that applies to the West. Fiqh of the East and fiqh of the West. And the fiqh of the East does not apply to the West because our situation is different than their situation, etc. And all of this crazy argument. And I said, subhanAllah, this is so stunning, even shocking. Because if they are true scholars, how can they not be consulted? The true scholar is the one, if you need a fatwa, and by the way, there's a difference, we have to understand the difference between a fatwa and the hukum of Allah Azza wa Jal. Meaning, if we want to know the ruling of Allah Azza wa Jal, then any scholars, regardless of where they live or where they happen to reside on earth, it shouldn't matter. The hukum is the same hukum. The ruling of Allah Azza wa Jal does not change based on whether you live by sea or in the mountain or in this continent or that continent. This is the same thing. It doesn't change. So this is the general ruling of Allah Azza wa Jal. If you need a fatwa which is in your particular case, in the particular, specific, your case, then even in that case, how can they not be consulted? A true scholar will ask you about all the details. They will make sure that they understand your situation, regardless of where you live. In the United States, in Canada, it doesn't matter. Or in Europe, it doesn't matter. They're going to ask you about all the details of the situation, and then they will give you a fatwa based on that. So to say that they do not know our situation is pure ignorance in itself, and disrespect to the scholars. No, with all due respect, they understand. You don't. With all due respect. You're actually separating people from the true scholars so that they give the fatwa to them. No, with all due respect, the scholar will never give you a fatwa, and this is from the characteristics, by the way, because giving the fatwa is not an easy matter, and the true scholar will take it so seriously. They don't give fatwa like that on the phone or oh, Sheikh, can I ask you a quick fatwa? There is no such a thing. If somebody gives that in that way, they're not a scholar then. They're not a mufti. The true scholar is the one who will take time and make sure they ask all the questions. Make sure that they fully understand your situation first, and then they give you the fatwa based on that. Because difference in the situation or specific situation will mean that a different fatwa is given. So to say that they don't understand, this is pure ignorance, even disrespect, to be frank with you. SubhanAllah, may Allah guide all. Can we use the microphone?
Naming a scholar, there is a scholar here in Chicago who has been giving advice to people who are approaching that you can buy a house, okay, to grow. And he says that there was a policeman, Abu Hanifa.
Yeah. لا ربا في دار الحرب.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he uses that. I believe that's a weak hadith. I don't know how strong that hadith is.
No, it is a good hadith. It is a sound hadith. But the problem is in the understanding.
So he advises the people that you can go and buy the house. Don't tell that I told you, because that I, the scholar, told you this message.
Allah.
That you can go and buy the house.
Allahu
So
Akbar.
there are a lot of other scholars listening to him because he's pretty senior in the area. So the other scholars have also come and done the same thing, but they have never come to the member and told
The whole community.
the whole community that hey, you can do this, you can go. They went and bought the property and they're living in those houses, they're taking best from you guys over and this is what the scholars are doing. So is that right? Can you just guide us on that?
Yeah. So the brother is asking a very good question. He is giving the example of a specific, they call themselves a scholar in the area, and they've been giving the fatwa that it's okay if you go and purchase a house with the traditional loan, which is a riba, really. It's just what they call a book example, right? This is how they refer it. It's like a textbook example of riba, exactly what Allah Azza wa Jal has forbidden. And they give this fatwa based on hadith from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is where he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, La riba fi dar al-harb. There is no riba in the land of war, meaning that it is not a place or a country of Islam, right? Dar al-harb. This is how it's defined. And I say, obviously, the hadith itself is sound, according to my knowledge. It is a sound hadith. It can be taken as a proof. But the problem is, it is in the understanding of the evidence itself. And subhanAllah, you just reminded me of a verse of poetry by one of the greatest poets of the Arabs, Mutanabbi. Some of you may especially those who speak Arabic, may recognize him. Mutanabbi rahimahullah ta'ala. He was one of the greatest poets of all times of the Arabs. In one verse of poetry, he said, وَكَمْ مِنْ قَائِلٍ قَوْلًا صَحِيحًا وَآفَتُهُ مِنَ الْفَهْمِ السَّقِيمِ. And how many people what they said is correct. What they said is correct, but the problem is in the wrong understanding of what he said. So the problem is not in what was said, but the problem is in the misunderstanding, in the wrong understanding of what was said. And this is exactly an example of that. And this is the blind following of certain people. And it's very ironic. It's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate, subhanAllah, because you know what's going to happen? They're going to actually, on the day of resurrection, are they going to take their sinful actions that they actually did based on their advice or based on their fatwa? Are they going to carry from their awzar, from those who took their fatwa and followed through on it? SubhanAllah, it's very unfortunate. This hadith, by the way, a lot of ai they explained it, and they said the meaning is not, what they take it as the meaning, is that in the place or in the land of harb, of war, not a land of Islam, there is no riba. Everything that you take, there is no riba. It's not a riba. It's not considered as a riba. And this is not the meaning. This is not the meaning. The meaning, as a lot of the scholars, A'immat al-Salaf, rahimahumullah ta'ala, including, I think, Imam al-Dhahabi, he actually commented on this hadith. And he said the meaning, the correct meaning and correct understanding of this hadith is that even in the places or the land of war, it is impermissible to take riba. This is the meaning. Because if you look at the Quran, at the ayah that outlawed riba, it is a comprehensive, there is no exceptions. Allah Azza wa Jal says, crystal clear, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. So riba is muharrama across the board, regardless of where it is, or what time it is, or any shape or form, or deceptful way that you actually try to decorate it in the eyes of people. It doesn't matter. Riba is a riba, and riba is always haram. There's no condition. It is always, regardless of where or when. And the hadith of Rasulullah cannot contradict the Quran, because it is all wahi from Allah Azza wa Jal. So al-haq cannot contradict al-haq. This is haq and this is haq, and they have to mean the same thing. So we say the correct meaning of this hadith is that even in the bilad al-harb, or the place, or even if it is not a Muslim land, even in that, it is not permissible to take riba. This is the meaning. So they're gonna, Allah musta'an, they're gonna actually on the day of resurrection, they're gonna take it to their neck, and they say, Ya Allah, they are the ones who advised us. They are the ones who gave us this fatwa. Allah musta'an. May Allah guide. May Allah guide. Like, any other question? No more questions. Moving forward, inshallah, in the next statement, Imam Abu Ja'far, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, statement 204, he said, وَلَا نُفَضِّلُ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ عَلَى أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامِ وَنَقُولُ نَبِيٌّ وَاحِدٌ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ جَمِيعِ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ. And we do not declare any of the awliya, the beloved and obedient servants of Allah, to be superior to any of the prophets, alayhimus salam. And we say a single prophet is superior to all of the awliya. This is actually a very interesting statement from Imam Abu Ja'far, quite important. In this statement, Imam Abu Ja'far, he, after obviously talking about the companions and then later on about the scholars, then he moved on again to the ones who come next in virtue after them. Who comes next in virtue after the scholars? Al-awliya, awliya Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Imam Abu Ja'far, in this statement, he wants to affirm that Aqidah At-Tahawiyyah wal Jama'ah, that the best of the people are al-anbiya. And then followed by the scholars, and then followed by the awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And that Nabi, the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, they are better. Any prophet is better than all of the awliya, right? And that Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah do not make al-awliya better than the prophets. As a matter of fact, one Nabi, only one of them, is better than all the awliya. And every prophet is better than all of the awliya. This is the aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Why is he mentioning this? He's mentioning this because during his time, during the time of Abu Ja'far At-Tahawiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, several deviant groups started to appear, including those extreme Sufis, who started to actually claim that al-awliya, they can reach a level that is better than al-anbiya. They can surpass al-anbiya and the Rasul of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and they can reach a level that no Nabi has reached. Dalal mubin, far away misguidance, a great misguidance. Dalal mubin, so he is really refuting this by this statement. He's refuting this deviant ideology that no wali can reach a level above or better than al-Nabi, and al-Anbiya are always better than al-Awliya, and any one of the Anbiya is better than all of the Awliya, alayhim salatu wassalam. And this is the result of this exaggeration in the status of al-awliya. Those extreme Sufis, in general, they exaggerate in the status of al-awliya. They glorify them so much. And some of them, they did so much as that they actually raised them above the prophets, alayhi salatu wassalam, which, like I said, is a huge misguidance. For al-wali, no matter how high of a status of al-iman and al-salah, righteousness and obedience to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, they reach, they only become only a hasana from al-hasanat of the Prophet that they follow. Yani they didn't reach, if you think about it, I want you to focus with me for a second. Al-wali is who? Is it in reality a true follower of a Nabi? Yani these people who we call awliya, and they are distinguished by this fadl of being an awliya. They only reach this level out of what? Obedience and following of the Nabi or the Rasul that they follow, or that they were ordered to follow. Yani this fadl that they reached is nothing but because of their obedience to the Prophet that was sent to them. Awliya from this ummah are awliya, and they get this fadl only because they follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what he came with, what he was sent with. This is what recognizes them, and this is what they are recognized by. Not because they reach a level higher than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No. By their actual submission. In most of the case, by their submission to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the wahi that he came with, whether wahi al-Quran or wahi sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when people abide by the guidance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the one who guided them, hidayat al-bayan. Yani he was the one who clarified to them, and he was the one who conveyed this khair to them. So they become actually a good deed of his good deeds, alayhi salatu wasalam. They don't surpass him. This is what actually made them recognized with this fadl. So this is something that must be understood, and this is something that is a principle, a foundation. We have to understand what they represent and who they are, the awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So no matter how good they are, no matter how righteous they are, or no matter how obedient they are only that because of their obedience to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are a good deed in his good deeds, one of his good deeds alayhi salatu wassalam, and they are recognized as such by their obedience, mutaba'a lil Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not because they follow their own understanding or they independently start receiving revelation from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala like some people claim. They say we have an immediate, a straight channel to Allah azza wa jal. We don't have to go through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of them, this is what they reached. They reached this level, and they are not better than the Prophets alayhi salatu wassalam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the one who was sent to clarify to the ummah what Allah azza wa jal wants. And this is why Allah azza wa jal says in the ayah of Surah, I think in Nahl, He said, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. And we have sent down to you dhikr, which is the Quran, right? The reminder and the advice from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And we have sent down to you the dhikr so that you may clarify clearly to man what has been sent down to them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is al-mubayyin. He is the one who clarified to the ummah the meanings of what was sent down to them, right? And if the awliya are the ones who truly follow that, like I said, they are one of the good deeds of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Like I said, this is refutation of those deviant groups who actually exaggerated in the status of the awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And a lot of them, they are not even true awliya. We're going to talk about that. The first matter that is related to this, speaking of an awliya, he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, وَلَا نُفَضِّلُ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ. Who are the awliya? This is the first thing we want to know. Who are the true awliya? What do we mean by awliya? Awliya are the plural of al-wali. So the awliya are a plural. What is the singular? The singular is al-wali. Wali, awliya. Al-wali is from al-walaya. Al-wali is derived from al-walaya. What is al-walaya? Is al-mahabba and al-qurb. Yani it is the love and the proximity. Yani they are close to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they love Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and they follow the obedience of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. These are the awliya. Yani al-awliya are the people of close proximity to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they are the ones who love Allah Azza wa Jal and love His deen and love His sharia. And they are called the awliya because of that. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala told us who they are and what they are upon. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says in the ayat, the 2 ayat of Surah Yunus, He said, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Who are they? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. No doubt, verily, the awliya of Allah, no fear shall come upon them, nor shall they grieve. Who are they? Those who believed and they used to fear Allah much. So what are the 2 qualities of al-awliya? Al-Iman and al-Taqwa. Al-Iman and al-Taqwa. How do we recognize al-Wali? By their Iman and by their Taqwa to Allah Azza wa Jal. There is no secret ingredient in here. There is no, this is not a, exclusive club. Only certain people can enter into it and others are excluded from it. It is not based on your lineage or what family name you come from, you associate with. Or it has nothing to do with the color of your garments. You don't have to wear green to be a wali of awliya Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You don't have to dress in a certain way, and have the amama, done in a certain way, or you have to wear a certain garment in a certain way. It has nothing to do with that. You even if you wear green or the best green color that you can, this doesn't make you a wali in and of itself. As a matter of fact, awliya Allah are not recognized by an appearance, a specific appearance. It has nothing to do with it. Where is this in the ayah? There's nothing, no mention of that. The true wali is recognized, he or she, by the way. He or she, even if there are awliya from the female. How do we recognize them? What are they known by? By 2 qualities and 2 characteristics. 2 sifat. Sifatan. Al-Iman and al-Taqwa. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, hence al-Iman. وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ, hence al-Taqwa to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, which is to fear Allah Azza wa Jal and to take protection from Allah Azza wa Jal, to take wiqaya. Taqwa is to take a shield from the punishment of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala by obeying His orders and staying away from His prohibitions. This is it. Any person is invited to this walaya to Allah Azza wa Jal. Any person can become, he or she can become a wali of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You don't dress in a certain way. You don't have to be from a certain family. Lineage. Oh, I come from this lineage. I come from that lineage. Doesn't make you a wali. Not at all. It doesn't help you at all, as a matter of fact. Doesn't help you a single bit. طيب. So, in walaya, like I said, it has to do with the iman and it has to do with the taqwa to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. People, with respect to the walaya and to this love, can be divided into 3 groups. And we did talk about that, but just a quick refresher. So, Muslim, how they deal with other people based on how they categorize them in these 3 categories. There are the first category that are the pure awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal that must be loved absolutely. These are the awliya from the malaika, angels, from the prophets and the messengers alayhi salatu wassalam. All of them should be loved because they are from awliya Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And siddiqeen, they are from the pure awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal. Shuhada, the martyrs who fought for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Salih al-mu'mineen, the righteous of the believers. These are from awliya Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and they must be loved absolutely. There is the second group which are the pure enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal and they must be hated. They must be hated. Like the mushrikeen, like the kuffar, like the munafiqeen, with the hypocrites, with the major hypocrisy, wal-iyadu billah. These are enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal and enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like he said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the ayah of Surah Al-Mujadala, he said, لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله وَلَوْ كَانُوا آبَاءَهُمْ أَوْ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ أَوْ إِخْوَانَهُمْ أَوْ عَشِيرَتَهُم. You will not find any people, يعني ya Muhammad, you will not find any people who believe in Allah and the last day, making friendship with those who oppose Allah and His Messenger, even though they were their fathers, or their sons, or their brothers, or their kindred. Yani they are from their kinship. So these are to be hated for the shirk that they carry, for the kufr, disbelief that they carry. This is the second group. The third group are the ones who should be loved from one aspect and hated from another aspect, because they have a mixed bag. So they should be loved from the aspect of the belief and from the iman and from the obedience that they have. But they also should be hated based on the disobedience that they have. So if they are sinful, based on that sin, based on those sins that they commit, they ought to be hated from that aspect. So they have obedience and they have sin. They ought to be loved based on the tawheed and the obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal that they do, but also they are to be hated based on the disobedience and the sinning that they do, that they commit. So, and the walaya to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and the walaya to the believers is relative to how righteous they are. So the more righteous they are, the more walaya and love they deserve. And the lesser of that they deserve. So it is based on their iman and based on their taqwa to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So whoever, let me go for another 5 minutes, inshallah. So whoever claims al-walaya, and there are a lot of people who claim that, by the way. A lot of people who claim, I am a wali. By the way, if he were a true wali, he wouldn't say that. No true wali will come and say, hey, oh people, I am a wali. Nobody would do that, because this is self-praise. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not self-praise yourself. هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Allah knows who is true taqi. So you shouldn't actually put yourself or present yourself that I am a wali of awliya Allah. Nobody would do that. But whoever claims this walaya to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, or people claim this walaya to that person, they say, oh, this is a wali, respect him. This is a wali of awliya Allah. And he doesn't have from an iman. You just look at them, what they do and how they act. You see, there's no iman. There's no indication of this iman. And there's no taqwa to Allah Azza wa Jal. Then you know immediately that they, with all due respect, they are liars. They are false awliya. They're not true awliya. They are false awliya and they're not true awliya. How many times have you heard, here or back home, by the way, how many times have you heard that they refer to a wali who is in reality they are magicians, or they are soothsayers, or they are fortune tellers, right? Or they are diviners, kahana, or they are from the who practice witchcraft or sorcery, and they think that this is from the walaya. They do certain things and they say things. Oh, mashallah, this is a wali. This is not from the walaya in anything, in any way, shape, or form. This has nothing to do with the walaya. And that is why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he wrote an excellent book, unique in its kind. To my knowledge, I don't know, I'm not aware of any similar book that was written by any other scholar. He called this book, it is titled, Al-Furqan Bayna Awliya al-Rahman wa Awliya al-Shaytan. So these so-called awliya, yes, they are awliya, but awliya of who? Shaitan. They are awliya of shaitan, wal-iyadu billah. Those soothsayers and fortune tellers and diviners and magicians and who practice sorcery. Yeah, they are awliya indeed, but they are awliya of shaitan, wal-iyadu billah. They're not awliya al-Rahman. And there's a big difference. This book is a thick book, by the way. Comprehensive book. It gives you a crystal clear difference of how you know awliya al-Rahman and how you know awliya al-Shaytan. This is why it's called al-Furqan. Al-Furqan is the crystal clear signs. Like Allah Azza wa Jal called the Quran al-Furqan, right? Which is, it gives you clear indication, clear signs. Clear signs by which you can differentiate between awliya al-Shaytan and awliya al-Rahman. I highly recommend that any one of you would consider actually reading this book, because it is an excellent book in its kind. And there's a big difference between those who claim al-walaya and those who are truly awliya of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. A lot of people are misled, or they are led to believe based on these weird things that they do, right? Based on these wrong signs, right? They actually make people believe that, these are awliya, and they convince them that these are awliya because they do things and they claim that these are karamat, which is something we're going to talk about, and they are not. They are actually supernatural things, but from shaitan. These are khawariq shaytaniyah. They are not khawariq imaniyah. They have nothing to do with the Rahman. They are things that shaitan is helping these people to do, and they are not signs of the true awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So, but the true awliya, they actually should be loved. We love awliya al-Rahman tabaraka wa ta'ala. From al-Sahaba and al-Tabi'een, Tabi'at-Tabi'een, the scholars, righteous of the believers, all of these are absolutely awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and we love them, and we take this as a deen. Yani we draw closer to Allah Azza wa Jal by loving them, and by following in their footsteps, and by taking them as awliya and drawing closer to them. He said, rahimahullah ta'ala, وَلَا نُفَضِّلُ and وَلَا نُفَضِّلُ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ عَلَى أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامِ. We do not take any of the awliya as better, or we do not make them more superior than any of the anbiya or any of the prophets of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Like I said, why is he mentioning this? This is an exact refutation of those extreme Sufis, for them who actually exaggerated with respect to the awliya, and they actually, some of them, they take those awliya as, like I said, more superior than the messengers of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they do not exaggerate with respect to awliya. They put each group of people in their righteous or in their right status. So we know the prophets and the messengers are the best of the humankind. And the awliya, they are below them, and they are in their own state or status of virtue, but we do not exaggerate them. So we actually put everyone in their rightful status and in their rightful place. We do not exaggerate with them. They exaggerate in the awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and like I said, they raise them above the anbiya. As a matter of fact, one of their so-called scholars of those extreme Sufis, one of their scholars, he said in a piece of poetry, he said, "Maqam al-nubuwati fi barzakhin." The status of the maqam of the prophethood, maqam al-nubuwah, maqam of the prophethood, it is in a barzakh, it is in a place. Fuwayq al-rasul, it is just above the rasul, the maqam al-rasul. وَتَحْتَ الْوَلِي, and it is below the level of al-wali. Can you imagine? He said, مَقَامُ النُّبُوَّةِ فِي بَرْزَخٍ, in a place in the middle. فُوَيْقَ الرَّسُولِ, just slightly above the Rasul. But it is وَتَحْتَ الْوَلِي, and it is below the Nabi. According to them, what is the level of virtue? The highest one is al-wali. Much below, notice, much below is al-Nabi. And then slightly below al-Nabi is al-Rasul. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. They got it all wrong, by the way. It is all wrong. We studied before, and if you remember, we studied the difference between al-Nabi and al-Rasul. And we said al-Rasul is actually better than al-Nabi. Al-Rasul is a Nabi. It is a subset of al-Anbiya. Al-Rasul are a subset of al-Anbiya, but they are a select group of al-Anbiya that are at a higher level than al-Anbiya because they were sent with their own individual sharia. Al-Anbiya were meant to actually support the same sharia of the Rasul that came before them. But they don't come up with, or they are not sent with their own individual sharia, separate sharia, but rather they come and support the sharia of the previous Rasul. And the Rasul are better than al-Anbiya. And al-awliya are even lesser than that. So they got it all wrong. Exactly in the wrong order. It's all wrong, subhanAllah. So this is what they believe. And like I said, this is from the great misguidance, wal-iyadu billah. And I finish by this. Some of those groups, like the extreme Sufis, this is what they believe. And even some of the Shia, in particular, Shia al-Ithnay Ashariyah, those who believe in the al-Isma of the 12 Imam, or so-called the 12 Imam, right? They also believe in that. They actually raise those awliya or a'imma, they so-called a'imma. they raised him above the messengers and the prophets. As a matter of fact, you probably heard of Al-Khomeini, right? Who actually started this revolution in Iran, right? In a book, one of his books, it's titled ضروريات المذهب. يعني the fundamentals of the madhab. يعني their madhab. مذهب الاثني عشر. الشيعي الاثني عشر. For them, الضروريات are the foundations, are the principles of the madhab, which do not even need a proof to establish. يعني they are so well established that you don't need to prove them. They're just well established. Any person will understand them. He said one of those, there are 5 ضروريات, necessities of the madhab. One of them is what? Is that أئمتنا لأئمتنا. For our أئمة, there is a مقام لا يبلغه ملك مقرب, cannot be reached by a close malak or a Nabi Mursal, or even a prophet that was sent. Nobody can reach that level. They are at the highest level. So they actually agree with those extreme Sufis that they raise those awliya above the messengers and above the prophets and even above the malaika, the angels of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And this is wal'iyadu billah from the crystal clear kufr in Allah Azza wa Jal, because Allah Azza wa Jal told us that the prophets and the messengers are the best of the creation and He selected them. Allahu yastafi min al-malaikati rusulan wa min al-nas. Allah Azza wa Jal selects from the angels, messengers, and from al-nas, and from the people, from the humans, He sent messengers. These are selection from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Al-Risala is not by, you practice certain things and you reach that level. It is istifa. It is a safwa from the bashar. Yani these are from the selection of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal selected them, and they are the best of the creation and the best of the humankind. Allah Azza wa Jal selected them. So this is, wal'iyadu billah, a huge deviation, a terrible deviation from al-haq and from what Allah Azza wa Jal told us. And this is the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that they do not exaggerate in al-awliya. Let me stop this. Obviously, we have more to say about that, inshallah. But let me stop here, inshallah. The food is ready and hot. Let's take 15 minutes, inshallah. Sorry, let's make it quick, inshallah, so that we can come back and continue, inshallah. Let's switch to the seat.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we're going to start again in 2 minutes. We're going to start again in 2 minutes, inshallah. الله يبارك فيك. Inshallah, if we can, brothers and sisters, if we can start heading back, we're going to start, inshallah. Are we good? السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. So inshallah, continuing from where we left off, in the statement 204, we said that all of the awliya, from their beginning to their end, all of them would not together equal one Nabi. And one Nabi is better than all of the awliya of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We do not exaggerate in them, nor do we raise them above the level that Allah Azza wa Jal has given them. Now obviously they have a great level of virtue, but they do not equate the messengers and the prophets, nor worse than that, they do not actually exceed them in virtue. Moving onward to statement number 205, he said, قال المصنف الإمام العلامة أبو جعفر الطحاوي الحنفي رحمه الله تعالى, he said, ونؤمن بما جاء من كراماتهم وصح عن الثقات من رواياتهم, and we believe in what is reported from their miracles, الكرامات,
and in the narrations about them which are authentically related by the reliable narrators. This statement has to do with the concept of al-karama, al-karamat, which Ahl al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, Ahl al-Hadith wal-Athar, wa Ahl al-Fiqh wal-Nadar, all of them, they affirm what's called al-karama, and they believe in it. And all of our righteous predecessors, they believe in the karama because it has been proven in the Quran, in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, and in the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as long as it has been narrated with authentic narrators or trustworthy narrators. Because obviously some people made up all kinds of stories. We don't take anything that has been narrated unless it is authentically narrated. So we believe in the concept of al-karama, and the plural of it is al-karamat. Al-karamat is the plural, and one of them, the one instance of it, is al-karama. Al-karama, like I said, is something that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah believe in. They believe that Allah Azza wa Jal blesses certain of the awliya with supernatural things called al-karama, and this is from the fadl of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We believe in that, we do not deny that. But we, like I said, we take it only from the authentic narrations. We don't believe any karama that was mentioned, but rather we only believe, or we take the one that has been, or the ones that have been authentically narrated. Like he said, وَصَحَّ يعني الصحيح وَصَحَّ عن الثقات. The thiqa are the ones who are trustworthy, يعني the reliable narrators. من رواياتهم, from the narrations that has been authentically transmitted by the reliable narrators. Why is he mentioning this? Why is this one of the topics that are typically mentioned in books of Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Because Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, or because some deviant groups, they deviated from this on two sides. Some groups, they deny the karama altogether. They deny this concept. They don't believe that there is such a thing as called al-karama. Like al-Mu'tazila and those who follow in their footsteps. Al-Mu'tazila, this madhab or this group, deviant group, and those who follow them, who are typically, they actually put the intellect in front of the text. Yani whatever their minds accept, they'll take it. And whatever their minds does not accept, they reject it. They say it doesn't make sense. So Al-Mu'tazila and those who follow in their footsteps from those who are intellectual, or they respect the intellect, they actually deny al-karamat, and even some of their extremists, from the extreme Mu'tazili, right, and those who follow them, they even deny some of al-mu'jizat of the prophets. They say it just doesn't make sense. We cannot comprehend that because their intellect does not accept it. On the other hand, those who deviated from the understanding of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah are the extreme Sufis. Those extreme Sufis, they actually the grave worshippers and those extreme Sufis who actually exaggerated, like they exaggerated in the awliya themselves, they also exaggerated in those karamat, or so-called karamat, that they affirm to some of the so-called awliya when they are actually awliya al-shaytan. They're not awliya al-Rahman. They are awliya al-shaytan, and they do crazy stuff, and then they attribute to them these karamat, and they use it as a proof to prove that these are awliya. And we're going to talk about that al-karama in itself is not a proof, is not a proof to prove that this person is a wali. It is actually the other way around. You don't prove a wali by al-karama, but rather you prove that this is a wali based on the two attributes that we discussed earlier. Who is al-wali? Kullu mu'minin taqi. Who is al-wali? Kullu mu'minin taqi. Every believer, pious believer, is a wali. And the awliya obviously are at levels. So the more the iman and the greater the taqwa to Allah Azza wa Jal, then the greater the walaya is. Right? The awliya are not one level. But in essence, every mu'minin taqi is a wali. Or some scholars, they refer to it, من كان مؤمنا تقيا كان لله وليا. Whoever is a pious believer, then he is a wali of Ar-Rahman Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. These people, they exaggerate in the awliya, and they exaggerate in their karamat, and they use it as a proof or evidence. It's not that way. You don't prove it that way. It's not a proof that somebody is a wali because they have a karama. Some awliya al-Rahman, they don't have a karama. So this is a fadl from Allah Azza wa Jal. He gives it to whomsoever He wishes, when they need it. Not every awliya, even from Sahaba. Not every Sahabi has a karama. They are the best example, or the exalted example of awliya al-Rahman. But not every Sahabi has a karama. It's not something that is given to every wali has to have a karama. They don't have to. Allah Azza wa Jal gives this fadl to whomsoever. So they even attributed some al-karamat to those who don't pray, and those who don't fast, and those who, wal-'iyadu billah, they do from al-munkarat. And then they say these are evidences, this is a karama and this is a wali, because they do things that are supernatural, not ordinary things. And this is, like I said, wrong. This discussion of al-karama is an important discussion and something that we must understand. What is al-karama? Al-karama is something that is supernatural. It is not something that is ordinary. So it is supernatural. And if it comes from a Nabi or a Prophet, then it is called something else. Something that is supernatural done by a Nabi or a Prophet is called what? Mu'jiza. So al-karama is something that is supernatural done by a wali. Or given rather, not done, but given by Allah Azza wa Jal to a wali. If it is brought by a prophet or a messenger, then there is another name. It is called al-mu'jiza, like the different mu'jizat, miraculous things that the prophets and the messengers of Allah Azza wa Jal did by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. From those examples of al-mu'jizat is al-Quran al-Karim. Quran in and of itself is the greatest miracle that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came with. And Allah Azza wa Jal challenged al-ins and al-jinn by making only few ayat like in the Quran. And they couldn't. This was a challenge. This was a miraculous thing. The Quran is miraculous speech because it is the speech of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. They couldn't do that. So they couldn't come with such a miracle. Even a surah, a short surah or 10 ayat, Allah Azza wa Jal challenged them. So this is the greatest mu'jiza, the greatest miracle of the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Also, another miracle is like the stick of Musa alayhi salam. You know the story, right? When he challenged, when he went to Fir'aun, right? And then he challenged him with the magicians, right? So Allah Azza wa Jal told Musa to throw the stick, and it turned by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal into a snake. Into a snake. So this is from al-mu'jiza. Like, for example, bringing the dead or the deceased back into life by Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah Azza wa Jal, it was bi-idhnillah. He was able to make this mu'jiza. And one of his mu'jizat is to bring وَأُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. I revive, or I bring the dead or the deceased back into life بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى. But if this miraculous thing or supernatural thing, if you wish, is done on the hand or by the one of the righteous of the believers, then it is karama that Allah Azza wa Jal blesses that person with this person from the awliya. Then He makes it happen on the hand or through that person. Again, you notice that I'm very accurate of how I put it, of how I express it. It is not by the wali. It is by Allah Azza wa Jal that He makes it happen through the wali. Like Isa ibn Maryam, he said, bi-idhnillah. He is not the one who actually revives the mawta, the deceased, but it is bi-idhnillah, by the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal. Like, for example, what happened from the examples of al-karamat al-awliya. Like an example, like Ashab al-Kahf. You know Ashab al-Kahf in Surah al-Kahf. That Allah Azza wa Jal made them sleep for some 300 years. Is that normal? That's not normal. Who can sleep for 300 years? Nobody can do that. So Ashab al-Kahf, they went into the cave and Allah Azza wa Jal protected them. And they slept for some 300 years. This is from al-mu'jizat. I'm sorry, not al-mu'jizat, from al-karamat. Because they are from the believers. They are from the righteous believers. So they were awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So this is an example of al-karamat that is mentioned in the Quran itself. Also from al-karamat is what happened to Maryam, the mother of Isa, right? Maryam alayhi salam, she used to, when Zakaria, right, who took guardianship of her, Allah Azza wa Jal gave him guardianship over her. When he used to come to her in the place, in al-mihrab, in the place of worship, he would be always amazed. He would find food with her. He's like, where is that food coming from? كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا. Where does this food come from? You never leave al-mihrab. You're worshiping, your place of worshiping. You didn't leave. Is it normal that the food just comes out of nowhere? That's not a normal thing, right? This is from al-karamat that Allah Azza wa Jal, her rizq from the food and drink would come to her without her going out to bring it, right? It would come to her and she would be worshipping in al-mihrab. So all of this is from al-karamat. And there are a lot of karamat that happen in this ummah, the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned a list of stories, authentic stories obviously, from karamat of the awliya of this ummah, awliya of the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But now there are people who claim to be awliya, and there are some superficial or supernatural things that happen on the hand, for example, of the fortune teller, or of the sorcerer, or of those soothsayers, right? And those magicians. These are not karamat. These are, yes, supernatural things, but these are khawariq, supernatural, shaytaniyah, because they work with the shaitan and with the soldiers. These are not al-karamat that Imam Abu Ja'far is talking about. Allah Azza wa Jal, why does Allah Azza wa Jal allow that to happen? Because Allah Azza wa Jal gave the shayateen, right, and their chief, shaitan, the devil one, right? He gave them the ability to do things, certain things, that are supernatural. And they can help those from al-ins. Allah Azza wa Jal allows them to help from people from al-ins in certain cases to do certain things that are supernatural. Why does Allah Azza wa Jal do that? Because this is a test. This is to test people to see who believes in them and who doesn't. And this is obviously, like I said, based on knowledge. It is a test. It is an imtihan, an ibtila from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, right? So some people, for example, will show you that they fly in the air or walk on the water, and they have nothing to do from al-walaya. They're not believers, they're not righteous, they don't have taqwa to Allah Azza wa Jal. Yes, they're doing certain things that are supernatural, but iyadan billah, it is shaytaniyah. It is from the deeds and from the action of shaitan that they serve those people from ins with. They help them with. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. How do I know if this superficial, I keep saying superficial, supernatural. How do I know? How can I tell as a Muslim? How can I tell if a supernatural thing is a karama or is it a supernatural shaytaniyah? How do I tell? If you look at the person who's doing it, if they are from the believers and from the pious, if they are following the deen of Islam and they do practice and they are mu'mineen, atqiya, like Allah Azza wa Jal says, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. Who are they? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. So if they are from the pious believers, right, then we know that this supernatural thing that is happening from them is a karama from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Otherwise, it is a khidmah, and in reality it's not a khidmah, but khidmah from shaitan. So this is not a karama from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal says in the ayah of Surah Al-An'am, He said, وَيَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ قَدْ اسْتَكْثَرْتُم مِّنَ الْإِنسِ وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُم مِّنَ الْإِنسِ رَبَّنَا اسْتَمْتَعَ بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ. And on the day when He will gather them all together and say, Allah Azza wa Jal will say, O you assembly of jinns, many did you mislead of man. You misled a lot of man, a lot of from ins. And their awliya, their friends and supporters and helpers from the ins, from the man, they will say, our Lord, we benefited one from the other, but now we have reached our appointed term with which you appointed for us. What does it mean? استمتع بعضنا ببعض. We benefited from one another. The ins benefited from the jinn, and the jinn benefited from the ins. How is that? The jinn, they benefited from the ins because they actually worshipped them. They're not going to do the service for free. There's no such a thing for free. So they benefited from the ins because they actually submitted to the jinn. And they obeyed those jinn. In return, they helped them to do these supernatural things. These al-khawariq al-shaytaniyah. So both ways they benefit. Those benefited from those and those benefited from those. Right? They gave them khidmah. They served them with these supernatural things. But it is not from Allah Azza wa Jal. It is shaytaniyah. Because they submitted to them and they obeyed them and they even worshipped them. And it always comes with disbelief in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And they'll do different things. It is authentic that they, for example, those who work with the jinn, they may be able to tell them, for example, something that was stolen, they'll tell them where it is. And this is what they trick people with. They say, I know where this thing is. Some money was stolen, they'll be able to tell them. How do they know? Shayateen comes and tell them. It is actually right there. Or they may even bring the stolen thing to them and say, this is, see. So people will fall for that and say, oh, mashallah, he's a wali. No, he's not a wali. This is not an indication of al-walaya. Al-walaya, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. This is the path of al-walaya to Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. Then Allah Azza wa Jal says in the next ayah, Surah Al-An'am, continuation. What does Allah Azza wa Jal say? قَالَ النَّارُ مَثْوَاكُمْ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. قال النار مثواكم خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم وكذلك نولي بعض الظالمين بعضا بما كانوا يكسبون. He will say, the fire be your dwelling place, you will dwell therein forever. Except as Allah may will. Certainly your Lord is all wise and knowing. And thus we do make the zalimeen, those wrongdoers, right? Awliya, friends of one another. And because of that which they used to earn. So these supernatural things that are shaytaniyah, right, is not to be mixed with al-walay, with al-karama. That Allah Azza wa Jal honors those awliya, true awliya, honors them with that. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So again, what is the difference between this and that? Both of them are supernatural things. What is the difference? The difference is we look at the one that is coming from. This supernatural thing that's coming from. If it is from a mu'min who is a righteous believer, then this is from al-karama, and this is what Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they believe that it is al-karama, right? This is something that is not natural, not something that people are used to, and it is something that is supernatural. And this distinction, when people do not understand it, a lot of confusion comes from it, and people are called awliya when they are not. People are called awliya when they are not. طيب. Okay, so 10 minutes more. How time goes by, subhanAllah. We still have a lot of material. طيب. Allah musta'an. I think we have to stop, inshallah. We'll resume bi'idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala next Saturday if we are still alive. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our eyes and make us see that which is haqq as haqq and that which is batil as falsehood. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep guiding us and keep us steadfast on the true path. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our ending a happy and good ending when we meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. جزاكم الله خيرا.
الله أكبر الفلاح